עכשיו, דוב, אתה יודע לשנות את הצ'אטים?
מה זאת אומרת לשנות? רגע, אני בודק, רגע, אני אעצר רגע. למה יש לי הכל במסכים ולא ביחד? איך אפשר לשנות את זה?
אני לא מבין את השאלה.
המסך, יש לי הכל בבודדים, יש לי מסך צ'אט בנפרד חלון, הכל בחלונות ולא ביחד.
את זה אני לא יודע. From German-speaking countries, from around Europe, also England, Australia, United States. So far, I don't know, about 300 and something people registered,
Yes.
but usually not
Maybe
everyone.
maybe I should have worn my non-existing tie for the occasion.
Yeah, now, Dov, how come I don't see him when he's talking now?
I'm here, right next to you.
Yeah, and I see David Shishkov.
אם
big
אתה
on my
עושה,
screen.
אתה יכול לעשות ספיקינג, שאת זה שמדבר, את זה מה אתה רואה אותו.
לא יודע, אני לא רואה איפה. בעיקר מה שאתם רואים זה בסדר?
אנחנו רואים טוב.
אתם רואים את הפרופסור, אתם רואים אותי?
מה שאנחנו בוחרים, עכשיו בחרתי ספיקר יו, אז אני רואה אותך כרגע, ואם
איפה?
פרופסור פרידמן ידבר, אז אני אראה אותו.
אני אדבר. You can't stop me, באמת.
הנה, עכשיו רואים אותו.
וואלה, איך אני לא רואה?
עשי ספיקר ויו, זה הכי טוב, שכולם יעשו ככה.
אני לא רואה את זה, איפה זה?
למעלה בצד ימין, אצלי כתוב ספיקר ויו.
כן, אצלי לא.
במסך הראשי.
כן, במסך הראשי. סליחה, אני...
טוב, יש לנו עוד זמן. אנשים עוד צריכים להגיע.
Gallery view. טוב, אני ב-Gallery view, יותר טוב לי. Anyway, Professor Friedman, אני, כמו שאמרתי לך, פחות או יותר מה שעשינו שלשום, לפני שלשום, באמת, יש לך תפיסה כזה יפה על כל הנושא הזה, אנחנו מחשיבים לחדשות, אנחנו שומעים כל מיני דעות, ורק מפיך אני שמעתי משהו הגיוני, שנראה לי...
קוהרנטי וקונסיסטנטי.
כן, דוקטור, וזה לא יודע, הבנתי שיש פתרון לבעיה הזאת.
נכון.
עכשיו אתה יודע, אני לא יודע מה כן יותר, לא יודע, אבל באירופה מצאנו שאנשים הרבה יותר חשדנים בכל הנושא של החיסון,
כן, נכון.
גם הממשלה.
מאוד.
אני חושב שזו קומבינציה של היעדר קופות חולים, היעדר system of delivery, והעובדה שהממשלות מוגבלות בהספקה בגלל שזה, אתה יודע, זה ל-27 מדינות within the EU, וזה קשה לעשות את החלוקה, וזה, the delivery system is more of an impediment than actual.
Yes.
There is sufficient amount of vaccination. It's just a matter of delivery. This is
getting it to the people, right? So here, yeah. See, these are really nice things to hear, Professor. I'm so happy you're with us.
Delighted to be here.
Yeah, it's really nice of you. I really appreciate it. I'm going to wait.
אנחנו נחכה עוד עד 6:05 אנחנו.
Yeah, I'm going to wait a couple more minutes.
I need to get out by 7.
I told everybody.
Okay.
So you better talk fast.
Don't worry. Just try to stop me.
That's great. It's great for you to come.
So who are the people who are attending this webinar?
These are people that read our magazine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're from all over the world.
Okay, excellent. Good.
And yes. Most of them are, I would say all of them are even maybe more Zionistic than you and I. They love Israel. Most of
don't
them.
love.
That's true. And Yeah, they're very, very lovely people, actually. Many of them are very faithful to our magazine. Some of them have been our readers for 20 or 30 years.
Oh,
We were a print magazine for many years, and just
print is
this
dead.
what's that?
Yeah,
Print is pretty much
Yeah,
out of print.
it's still very popular
Yeah.
in German-speaking countries. In Germany, we
because
still have.
Germans are old-fashioned.
Yeah, I don't know. Many people
They
love
like
the magazine. And
I try to get used to reading using Kindle. I can't. I need to do this. Turn the page. I mean, I'm an old timer. What can I tell you? The
Right,
smell
yeah,
of the smell of a book.
oh
The
yeah,
pages. It's just like
yeah, sure,
it's to me. It's heaven. Seriously.
yeah, I understand. I love books and reading also. צריך להשתיק את אביאל.
כן, השתיק אותו. כן, הוא שתק השתיק את עצמו, אתה שתק.
אביאל הוא בעל העיתון והעורך הראשי.
בגלל זה אנחנו מרשים לו להיכנס גם. טוב, עוד 4 דקות, יש כבר 82 מתוך ה-250, ככה זה.
אני אומר לך, כבר מעבר ל-300 נרשמו. הם יבואו בזמן.
באמת? כן, כן.
כן. Well, for all of you who are with us, we will take a few minutes before we begin. It's so nice to see all of you. I see not a few German speakers. If you are a Deutsch gesprochen, kann du deine Hand aufstehen? Danke, danke. We have, not a few German speakers with us from different countries around Switzerland, Germany, Austria. Very, very nice. Oh, yeah, people are putting their hands up with their chats, right.
Dann kann ich eben kurz auf Deutsch auch nur einmal Hallo sagen an alle unsere deutschen Teilnehmer. Und wenn Sie Fragen haben und des Englischen nicht so mächtig sind, dann können Sie diese Fragen hier weiterzuleiten. Ansonsten wird es auch eine Aufnahme dieses Treffens geben und dort wird es dann mit Untertiteln ausgestattet werden. Also Sie verpassen nichts. Und jetzt viel Spaß. Okay, back to you.
Thanks, Dov. Dankeschön. So let me just give you a little bit of introduction of what we'll be doing together. We have 1 hour with the professor. He's a very important and responsible and busy man. So at 7 o'clock, he will be exiting, going back to his work. Although I know he sees this as part of his work. He wants us to understand this terrible pandemic that we're going through, and maybe together even begin learning about what we can do to get beyond it. We will begin. I will be asking the professor a few questions, and we will have some interaction between himself and myself. And if you would like to ask a question, we won't be able to handle all your questions, but our colleague David Shishkov is here, and you can put your questions on the chat, and David will collect those, and we will have some time to have a few of your questions, as many as we can. We will take them from the chat because there are too many people, to do it otherwise. So I'm going to begin. Let me introduce our distinguished guest to you. Here in Israel, it's 6 o'clock in the evening. The sun has gone down. It's raining outside where I am. Professor Eitan Friedman is the former chairman of a Center for Healthy Policy Research in the Negev. He is the head of the Department of Health Systems Management and currently
That's not
head.
me. That's not me. That's not
Oh,
me.
is that not you?
Yeah. Close but no cigar. No, that's not even
Okay,
close.
well,
I'll,
what I
I'll,
do
I'll
know is that,
introduce, I'll introduce myself. Don't worry about it.
please do that.
I
Thank
will.
you. I'm sorry
Okay.
for the confusion.
No. So my name is Eitan Friedman, and I have an MD from the Secular School of Medicine at the Tel Aviv University since 1977. I have a PhD from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden in 1994. I'm a specialist both in internal medicine and genetics. I worked at the Sheba Medical Center. That's where I finished my residency in internal medicine. Then I moved to the NIH. I worked there for 4.5 years at the NIDDK. Then I moved to Sweden to get my PhD. Then I moved back to the United States and I worked for a year at the MD Anderson Cancer Center. And in October of '94, I came back to Israel because I'm a Zionist and left my 2 daughters and my ex-wife in the United States and came back to Israel. And ever since then, I've established and I'm the head of the oncogenetics unit at the Sheba Medical Center, where we identify individuals who are at high risk for developing cancer based primarily on their personal and family history of clustering of cancer in the family. And at times we can complement that with genetic testing. We have had over the last 25 years, we've counseled more than 31,000 individuals for more than 26,000 families. We've identified 5,000 individuals who carry mutations in cancer susceptibility genes. Since 2007, we've established a high-risk clinic that follows up women who carry mutations in BRCA1 and BRCA2. Over the past 2 years, we have established a similar clinic for men. And this is something that is really close to my heart. And there are 2 issues that are really, really important for me to mention. First of all, 2 of my most coveted achievements are my 2 daughters, Maya and Adi, who live in the United States. And one of them, Adi, just gave birth to my first and still only granddaughter 16 days ago, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm also the first Israeli to ever swim across the English Channel, and I plan to do it again when I'm 75 to become the oldest person in the world to have ever done it. If anybody tries to do that within the next 7 years, I'll retry it at age 80. So this is a brief introduction of me.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. We really feel, for me personally, and I'm sure for all of us, just an opportunity to hear from an expert like yourself here in Israel, to talk to us about what's going on with the corona and with the pandemic here in Israel, and also the implications that has all around the world. So again, thank you very much for being with us. Let's get to it. As I mentioned, the doctor will have to leave us at 7 o'clock sharp. I'd just like to begin, if you could just talk to us, when you first heard about the COVID-19 virus, what were your impressions? What did you do?
Well, at first blush, I was intrigued. I was intrigued how basically a simple respiratory virus could provoke such reactions. And there were a lot of unknowns in the beginning. There were a lot of things that we thought we knew and we didn't actually know. For example, how is the virus being transmitted from person to person? And I still remember pictures from Italy, from Spain, from the United States, where people were fumigating and disinfecting the subways and other things that may contain the virus. And now we know that this is the least, I mean, it is not an easy way to contract the virus through surfaces, whether they'll be flat or whether it'll be scratched. And the virus primarily is being transmitted from person to person in a droplet fashion. And droplets are big chunks of drops, more than 5 microns, and they simply, because of their size, they do not evaporate. They simply sink about, I don't know, 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters, depending on your height. And this is the primary way of transmission. We know that despite the fact that you can actually find traces of the virus on surfaces, this is not infective. So the whole issue of actually disinfecting is a false pretense. And I remember looking at these pictures and asking myself, is that real? And then I started reading about it. And then I decided way back in late March in Israel to start my own program, so to speak, and I call it my sane Corona corner. And initially I was doing it every day on Facebook, and now I do it maybe 3, maybe 4 times a week. And I try to explain what is known about the virus, what is the progress, what is the state of the art in terms of science, and primarily to get the public aware that this is not what we thought it would be. So initially, let's say, what is the case fatality rate or infective fatality rate? Namely, how many of the infected people die of this virus? Initially, the numbers were striking. You know, they were talking about 3.4%. 3.4% of people infected would have died of the disease. Right now, we know the numbers are about 0.5, maybe 0.6%. And we know that the infection, the ability of the virus to cause severe disease and mortality are correlated very, very tightly with age and other associated disorders. And it seems to me that this is the first message to get across. Not everybody is at the same risk, despite the fact that this is more infective in terms of infectivity than influenza. Influenza does kill infants. This virus rarely, if ever, causes severe disease in individuals under the age of 20. And just to give you a number that is often quoted, if a person above the age of 85 contracts this virus, the chances of mortality are 300 to 1,000 individuals. That's 30%. The chances of an individual under the age of 20 to die of the disease are 0.3 to 1,000. That's minimum, 3 to 100,000. And not only, and as this pandemic rolled in and the numbers grew and more literature, I found it intriguing and intellectually stimulating to read and try to emulate and try to understand how the progress is. And I have to tell you, I'm a fan of facts. I'm a fan of science. I'm a fan of what is right and what is wrong. And I find it that, at least in Israel, and I don't know about Germany, I don't know about other places in the world, I find that the decisions that were made by the decision makers were not always parallel the science, not always driven by the epidemiologists or healthcare providers, but rather politics played a major part in these decisions. And this is something that I have to say, I don't agree with that. Places that were successful in combating and lowering the rate of people who die of the disease have had the privilege of giving the scientists, the epidemiologists, the stage, and the politicians ask them, what do you need for this pandemic to go away? We will provide you with the means. We didn't know at first. We didn't know whether nationwide lockdowns would work, and everybody around the world did the same except for Sweden, except for other countries like Japan. Japan never had a nationwide lockdown. And the question then became, are nationwide lockdowns effective in terms of health? Now we have to remember, since 1946, the WHO defined health not only as lack of disease, but health in terms of lack of physical, financial, cognitive, everything around it is also health. And the prices that we have to pay for a nationwide lockdown, and I have to remind you, Israel currently is on the 3rd nationwide lockdown. And this is the end of the first week, and they're trying, and originally it was slated to be for 2 weeks. Now they're talking about another 2 weeks. It's the damage done to people. This is concrete. This is not something that I'm dreaming about. These are concrete damages. The damages that are done to the population in terms of nationwide lockdowns are incomprehensible. I'll give you a couple of examples. The direct cost of a nationwide lockdown in finances in Israel is half a billion shekels. With that amount of money, we could supplement the healthcare basket for a whole year in Israel. Now, the healthcare basket is something that is being supplemented every year. So 2 weeks, that's 14 years added value. And you can save a lot of people with new technologies that are being introduced into the health basket. Not only that, but there's a recent article that was published this week by Ben David, Eran Ben David from Stanford University, showing that nationwide lockdowns, and he compared it in Japan, Sweden, Italy, Spain, United States, United Kingdom, Iran, Italy, and the conclusion is that there is no concrete proof that nationwide lockdowns do anything in terms of growth of the virus. Now, the notion that we can control the virus through nationwide lockdown is a false premise. And the number of infected individuals a day is not significant. What are we worried about? We're worried about overwhelming the healthcare system in terms of resources. So we need enough physicians, enough respirators, and enough beds in the hospital to treat individuals, not only in the hospitals, but also in ambulatory medicine. Now in Israel, we were never that close to needing a nationwide lockdown because Israel is a country of 9.2 million people. We have 44,000 beds. We have 1,500 beds in intensive care unit, and we're never close. So the basic.
So Professor,
I'm sorry.
Professor.
I'm sorry.
No. That's, what you're saying is crucial. I mean, you've laid the foundation for us to begin to understand what's really going on. And we can begin to see some of the confusion that's been going on. So I'd like you to address two questions for us based on what you have said. First of all, why did the politicians get involved in this if they did not know what they were doing? And the second question is, so what should we be doing if these lockdowns don't work, and it's still out of control? A year later, we're still sitting at home. The numbers of people getting sick and dying are rising, and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight.
Mm-hmm.
So
well,
talk to us about those two things, please.
Okay. Why the politicians got involved, you need to ask them. I'm not a politician. I think they wanted the glory of quenching the disease, quenching the pandemic, and these are their rewards. I'm the hero of this country or that country. I've quenched this. I've saved my people. It doesn't work.
Well,
Why
where were the physicians and the scientists? Why weren't they speaking up?
We were speaking up. We were really shut down. In Israel, at least, initially and even currently, the people who are giving advice to the government, who are scientists, but they are not epidemiologists, they are not physicians, they're physicists, and they're modelists, and they're computer scientists. They're not physicians, and they treat the virus and us like particles, and it's not. Medicine and epidemiology do not behave like their models. And they've shown times and again, these models predicted in March in Israel for 10,000 people to die within 6 weeks. They were wrong. They predicted in August for 20,000 people to be needing to be ventilated. They were dead wrong. And they keep on feeding that. Now, why the politicians are doing that, I have no idea. But I think there was initially fear of the unknown. And it's okay. If you don't know, you lock yourself down, and that's fine. But now we have sufficient data. There are more than 92 million people infected worldwide. 65 million have already have recovered from the disease. 1.9 million people died of this virus. We know now a lot about how it spreads, how it behaves. We know about the mutations. We know that it will continue to mutate. We know a lot more.
So Professor, what should we be doing then? What did we do wrong? And what should we be doing now?
I can suggest a few things. First of all, we don't need nationwide lockdowns. We need differential lockdowns. We need to target populations who are at risk in geographical locations. So we need to protect the elders. In Israel, 11% of the population are over the age of 65. Protect these individuals. If someone age 40 is infected, it doesn't pose a problem. Schools should be open. Schools should be open because kids rarely develop symptomatic disease, and they are less likely to infect others. The figures in Israel, at least in the educational system, we have 2.4 million students up to the age of 18. Of the infected individuals in this system, right now, 85% were not infected in school. They were infected at home. So it's not, schools should be kept open. What do we do in terms of interaction? We protect the elders. We protect the populations who are at risk. And we do a differential. So if you see someplace that the rate of positive individuals using the PCR technique is rising, you lock that area down. You don't impose a nationwide lockdown. You need to do that. And you have to vaccinate older people. Vaccination works. Vaccinate individuals who are over the age of 60 and you will quench the disease. This is a given. I don't care if it's Moderna, I don't care if it's Pfizer, I don't care if it's AstraZeneca. People need to be vaccinated. We know these studies were published at the end of, in December of 2020 in the New England Journal of Medicine, both for Pfizer and Moderna. And we know that individuals who take 2 shots of the vaccine have 95% personal protection from being infected, symptomatic, and clinically significant. 95%. This is
so a lot of people, Professor, have questions about the vaccines. People have fears about it. Talk to us a little bit, and you're telling us that everyone over 65 should get vaccinated.
absolutely.
Why? How does that work, and how can you assure us that it's safe?
Well, people say usually it takes 6, 7, 8 years for a vaccine to be developed. The reason why it was so accelerated is there are several reasons for that. One, the governments, especially the EU and the US government, have provided funds for the developers of the vaccines, and there are close to 300 different companies who are currently being involved in vaccine development, have told them, we don't care. Don't wait for the results of the preclinical and clinical studies. Start producing masses of vaccines, so once phase 3 is over, we can distribute it. This is one reason. The other reason is this is unprecedented collaboration between the pharma industry and the scientific community, and everything else died out. No cancer research, no cardiovascular research, nothing existed, only COVID-19. People have focused on that, and masses of money and knowledge and networking, and it was passed around. So the development has was rapidly accelerated. Third, the messenger RNA technique, which has been used in animals and in animal models for CMV, for Zika, and also for Ebola, is a lot faster than other conventional techniques like attenuated live virus, inactivated virus, or vector-used virus. It's much faster. And the regulation was accelerated, not at the expense of being very rigorous about testing the preclinical and clinical data. So, and a lot more people were recruited into phase 3. So Moderna recruited 30,000 people, Pfizer 43,000 people, usually phase 3, 1,000 to 3,000. So the sheer numbers over a period of time of 2 months or 3 months enable us to say these vaccines are effective in preventing the disease.
Tell us how this vaccine works.
Hold on one moment. There is still an unknown whether someone who is vaccinated would be less infective to others. This has not been published, and this is currently being tested by both Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer. There is preliminary evidence on 200,000 people in Israel. From the Kalit HMO, Ran Balitzer has not published it as a scientific paper, but as a statement that after 2 weeks after the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine, individuals who are vaccinated have a 33% less chance of infecting others. This is an amazing finding. And if it is true, and if it comes to 60% or 70% after the second dose, this pandemic will be over in a matter of months.
So that would be wonderful, you know, from your mouth to the world.
To whoever.
Now, some people have said that Israel is kind of a test case of how to handle this pandemic nationally in
The
terms
vaccine distribution, not the
of the vaccine. Exactly.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. Is that a fair assessment? Is that something that has potential to help the rest of the world?
I definitely think so. I think there are several advantages to Israel, you know, besides the fact that I live here and this is my home and I'm going nowhere. The first advantage, it's a small country, 9.4 million, very small geographically, very accessible. The second advantage is that we have an amazing HMO system and the national healthcare basket and the national law that provides healthcare, the basic healthcare to everyone. If it were not for the HMOs and their distribution and the chain of distribution, we would not have been able to vaccinate up to 170,000 people in each and every single day.
Let's just explain to people what an HMO is, doctor. These are the national clinics like Meuchedet and Clari.
So people get an insurance. It's partly covered. It's all covered by the state, the basic insurance, and you can buy extra insurance for additional disorders. But you basically belong to an organization for those in the United States, like Kaiser Permanente or the VA in the United States, and they have their own physicians, their own clinic, their own outposts in every town, in every city, in every little nook and cranny in Israel. There are outposts that harbor physicians, nurses, physician assistants, and administrators. So you don't have to go far away from where you live. You get your medical needs right at.
So this helps with the distribution of the vaccine. But what else is why? Otherwise, is Israel also a good model?
The distribution is easy. People are rational. The country can control the influx of incoming individuals. So basically, we have a single portal of entry through the Ben Gurion airport. If you close that airport, you can control the vaccination rate in Israel. You know, this is the only way to enter Israel. And if you make sure that nobody enters the country for at least 2 to 3 weeks, you can vaccinate. And then even if someone becomes infected, the chain would be broken by the sheer numbers. So you have to remember, you have to get to about 65% of the individuals who are vaccinated to get to the so-called herd immunity. Now, this 65% may be composed of two fractions. About 15% of the people in the United States, probably in Israel, have already been infected and have antibodies. This is based on certain assumptions. Maybe it's only 12%. With a vaccine that is 95%, let's say even 80% effective, you need to vaccinate only 60% of the population to get combined to 65%. When you get to 65%, herd immunity would have been achieved. And once you get there, the country would be.
Why is that, doctor? Why 65%? Why is that a magic number?
It's just an arbitrary number, and based on the number of individuals that a single individual infects. If an infection does not transfer, if you're immune, 65% is sufficient.
It has to do with the spread.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you this. I understood from you earlier that there are two ways of becoming vaccinated.
Yeah.
Right. Either by
being infected
with the disease, right, and develop antibodies, or getting a vaccination.
Right. Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
And so the idea is, and I think I heard you say that in Israel we would need to vaccinate 2 million people. Right. Is that correct?
Yeah. To prevent the 2 million people is derived from protecting the elders. If the country of 9.2 million has 11% of people up to the age of 65 and up, and 15% 60 and up, you vaccinate 2 million people. You don't need to vaccinate the children yet because it has not been proven to be effective, nor there is a need for it right now. So with 2 million vaccinated individuals in the right age group, the disease is not going to be overwhelming the healthcare system.
And when is Israel going to achieve that?
When?
Would you predict?
Probably early February, mid-February.
Really?
Yeah, Israel.
So are you saying that by the end of
70?
Are you saying that by the time of Purim, we're going to go back to some sort of normal life?
if we can go back to normal life with masks, if the predictions that there's going to be a lower infectivity rate, not only you protect yourself, but you infect less others, probably we can take the mask off by Pesach.
By Pesach.
I have one question of a German viewer, if I just can interrupt you.
Yeah,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I get carried away.
No, it's great.
What about this? When this will be able, when Israel will get the Israeli?
The Israeli vaccine?
Yes, when it will be ready for us. I think also it's much cheaper than
first of all, I think it's a great idea for Israel to have its own capability to develop a vaccine. I think it's a great idea, and the amount of money that was poured into it is really, you know, it's peanuts. It's 100 million shekels. It's nothing in comparison to what AstraZeneca has spent and Pfizer has spent. However, there is a single problem right now. It is, how do you recruit individuals, to 30,000 individuals, to be tested in the third phase of this trial? Because if you participate in this trial, you cannot be vaccinated against COVID-19 with AstraZeneca or Pfizer or Moderna. And ethically, I think it would be pretty impossible to ask people not to be vaccinated to participate in the third phase. You can do the third phase in countries where there is no compulsory vaccine, not compulsory, but there's no widespread vaccination. It's going to be pretty hard to get to the vaccine. And by the way, the Israeli vaccine has the same platform as the AstraZeneca vaccine in terms of constructing a virus and a virus that is not infective to human beings and inserting a piece of the SARS virus in it, and that creates the protein.
I think we have another question, Doctor, from one of our viewers, David Shishkov. Do you have a question for the professor? David?
David?
Maybe.
David, you raised your hand.
Yeah, he raised his hand.
Yeah. I can't see him, nor can I hear him.
So, Doctor, so, you know, I want to say again, what you're telling us makes a lot of sense, right? We get kind of a population.
David wants to talk. David wants to talk.
Huh?
David wants to talk.
Shishkov, you there?
David.
Hello. I don't know.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
Okay.
Anyway,
some internet issues.
So again, what you're telling us, to me, makes a lot of sense. We get a deep population immunity through our children and young people just getting sick with the virus. They develop antibodies, and that's it. And we don't know how long those antibodies will last, but for whatever, at least we can get back to some sort of normal lifestyle. And the older and at-risk people, we inoculate with a vaccination.
Right.
And so it just sounds so simple. Are there people now in the government understanding this, Doctor, and also in the medical community? Is there a general agreement that this is the way forward now?
Absolutely. There are several differences between myself and some other people who belong to, you know, a non-government, non-paid, non-political group. But the decision makers are, I don't know why, but they listen to the voice, not the voice of reason. They listen, they align themselves with the right wing, I would say right wing, but really tough people. And until this week, they said, we need to quench the virus. There is no way to quench a virus of this magnitude. We will continue to live with this virus for the foreseeable future. We cannot get to zero infections. We can get to a time and a position where the infections would not pose a problem to older individuals like myself and to the general public or the healthcare system. We will coexist with the virus. And the government's stance until this week was, we need to quench the virus. The number of newly infected individuals a day is the prime issue. It is not. What the prime issue is, how many individuals are affecting the healthcare system, both in the hospital and outside of the hospital. How many people needs careful attention. is the medical system sufficient in its funds and its resources to provide the care? The medical individuals who take care of the patients are totally exhausted. They are totally, they need a vacation. And one of the reasons that was quoted for the third lockdown is we need these people to relax. There is another way. Recruit more physicians, recruit more nurses. There are physicians on the verge or past the verge of retirement that'd be more than willing to come and lend a helping hand. There are sufficient number of beds. There are sufficient numbers of ventilators. Israel has bought 5,000 ventilators in March. We need to understand that the way to take care of a lot of people is not to quench the number of incoming individuals, but rather complement and supplement the healthcare system with resources. This is more rational. It's easier and it's less destructive.
So I want to see if our colleague David Shishkoff, are you there? You have a question for us? Because I know people have been putting in questions. David, can you unmute your microphone and ask a question? He's having trouble there with his.
Yes,
Here.
I am. We have several questions here. I'm going to read you a few questions, and then you can answer whatever you want to. Several people asked if you could give us just a very basic idea for uneducated or lay people how the vaccine works.
Stop. And at my age, wait. At my age, a question and an answer, okay?
Great.
So basically, the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine are messenger RNA vaccines. And the way it works, the messenger RNA is a very, very unstable molecule. So they take the messenger RNA, not of the entire virus. The virus has 30,000 base pairs, and the spike protein, which is encoded by less than 4,000 bases. So they take these 4,000 bases, they put it in a box, so to speak, that's laden with fat, a lipid. It's not water soluble, that protects them from being degraded. You inject it into the muscle, then it enters into a cell. It can be a macrophage, it can be a muscle cell, it can be a dendritic cell, it can be any cell. And once the RNA is in the cell, this lipid layer dissolves. Then the messenger RNA looks around in the cytoplasm, it hijacks the system, the machinery of the cell, and it produces the spike protein. This is what it produces. The spike protein is the part of the virus that attaches, helps the virus to attach to the epithelial cell of the upper respiratory tract. Once it attaches, the virus enters the cell and replicates, and thereby kills the cell and continues its way from the nose, the mouth, into the lungs. When the body creates this protein, this spike protein, which is foreign to the body, the immune system recognizes as a foreign thing. And then it creates antibodies, and then it creates memory cells that can produce antibodies in great quantities if it is encountered again. And there's a third system called T cells, which are cells that are capable of attacking cells that are presenting these antibodies, these specific antigens. So basically, you train the body to recognize this specific protein. And once the real virus enters, these are recruited and they kill the virus when there's a small amount of virus before it replicates.
Is it dangerous in any way, the vaccination? Is it dangerous?
No. There have been a lot of fake news, and I think I told you, I saw someone, she calls herself a physician, who said that because of the vaccine, and it is a direct consequence of the vaccine, 50 million Americans would die. There have been a lot of rumors that it may change your DNA, that it affects your fertility. Now, in order to change the DNA, the messenger RNA needs to get into the nucleus of the cell. It does not enter the nucleus. Once it does what it does in the cytoplasm, it is degraded, and it's within a matter of an hour or 2 hours, and no more. That's it. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect fertility. It doesn't affect women who are pregnant, who were accidentally vaccinated, do not have any side effects.
It's not dangerous. Not dangerous.
It's not dangerous. No.
Let's go on to another question, David.
Okay. can you give us a basic idea of the difference among the different vaccines, Oxford, Pfizer, Moderna?
Pfizer and Moderna are both messenger RNA vaccines, and this is what I've just described. The AstraZeneca and the Israeli vaccine are based on a different notion. So you take a virus that infects animals, not human beings. It's not dangerous. It's not clinically relevant to human beings. In the case of AstraZeneca, it's an adenovirus that is infectious to chimpanzees. In Israel, it's a VAV virus. And then using molecular biology techniques, you insert the part of the virus that creates the same spike protein into that virus, and you inject it. The virus replicates. It generates, using the same scheme, it generates antibodies and T cells, and that's it. It does not integrate into the human genome. End of story.
It produces the same
The same response. The same response.
Protection from the virus, and it's not dangerous.
Exactly.
David, another question?
There's a question about hydroxychloroquine and
Oh.
antibiotics.
Don't start me on that. Initially, there was a very small study from China showing that hydroxychloroquine, which is a medication with a known safety profile that is used to treat malaria and even to prevent malaria. And I think Trump said that he's taking it, I'm taking it, it's a good thing. I heard good things about it, using such rationale. And it turned out that using a much larger study, really randomized control trials, the WHO has over the last 4 months issued a warning. Hydroxychloroquine is not useful to treating individuals infected with COVID-19. By the way, the Israeli government in April has bought 10 tons of hydroxychloroquine from India for reasons that are beyond me, and we will never know the truth because all the protocols of the government have been sealed for 30 years. Why? I don't know, but I'm curious to see. I don't plan to sit around for 30 years, but maybe my offspring.
So I saw, do you have another question, David?
Yeah, one more. I think you answered I'm going to just give you the last one that I know of that you have not already answered. And it is, can you have a vaccine even if you have heart disease?
Oh, yeah. The reason not to be vaccinated are actually few. First of all, it was not tested. At least the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine have not been tested in kids under the age of 16. Now, both companies are doing a third phase for kids 12 to 16, and we will know. So if it is safe, we will know, and then they can be vaccinated. I'm not sure that this should be a priority right now because we need to protect those who are at risk, the elders, those with hypertension, diabetes, et cetera, immunosuppressed individuals. In terms of heart disease, it is important to understand what is a heart disease. Is it coronary artery disease? Is it a valvular disease? Is it a cardiomyopathy? So one heart disease does not resemble the others. There are very few contraindications to getting the vaccine. One of them is if you have developed an anaphylactic reaction to the first vaccine, then you cannot get the second vaccine. The major component of the vaccine, both in the Moderna and the Pfizer, is a substance called PEG, polyethylene glycol. And for those living in Sweden, this is the substance that's been spritzing the ship that was brought up, the Vasa at the Vasa Museum. If you develop anaphylaxis to this, you should not be vaccinated. But peanut allergy, penicillin allergy, any allergies at all are not a contraindication to getting the vaccine.
Wow. And again, we hear so many things, Professor, that sometimes we hear the exact opposite of what you're telling us.
There have been two cases in England where people have developed severe allergic reactions. 2 people out of 1 million, I'm not sure that this would cut it. In Israel, I've not heard of any anaphylactic shock or any serious adverse reactions. And if we're talking about the trials, at least in the Pfizer trial, 2 people in the vaccine group of 21,000 have died. One had heart attack and the other committed suicide. I have a hard time connecting the suicide to getting the vaccine.
Sure. So just like a couple of questions I've seen come up. If you could address them, please. So in light of all, should we still be wearing masks and distancing, Doctor?
Well,
why do you laugh, Doctor?
Because the whole issue of wearing masks out in the open, on the beach, in parks, even when you run. I just saw recently a woman swimming with a mask with her head out of the water, which is, you know, this is crazy. The whole issue of masks is controversial. First of all, masks are recommended. Initially, they were not recommended even by the Surgeon General of the United States. And he said, this is bad for you. It can reinfect you. That's not true. Masks are effective when you're in closed spaces, when you cannot keep your distance. As I said, the primary route of infection is through droplet. Some aerosol, but a lot of droplets. So if you cannot keep 2 meters from each other, wear a mask. But out in the open, and there is a very famous study from Denmark called Danmarks that was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine about 2 months ago, where they've looked at over 6,000 individuals, and they divided them into 2 groups, one who wore masks outside in the open air, and one who did not wear masks. And I think in May and June in Denmark, those who wore masks in the open had 1.8% infection. Those who did not wear masks, those who wore masks 1.8, those who did not wear masks were 2.1%. There is not statistically different. So wearing masks out in the open, to me, is BS. Indoors, yes. And why the Ministry of Health here and in some other countries have emphasized wear your mask.
Yeah. The police run around on the streets.
I know.
They stop me. I'm walking down the street and
they were chasing people in the park for not wearing masks, you know?
Yeah.
It's absurd. It is truly absurd.
So, Professor, why not use amino acids and vitamins to strengthen our immune system rather than a vaccine?
Because it has never been proven to work. You know, there's been a lot of brouhaha about magnesium and vitamin C and selenium and vitamin D and all sorts. I mean, any supplement, be it selenium, be it antioxidant, has no proven ability to increase the efficacy or the durability of our immune system. There is no single scientific proof. There are people who swear by it. There are people who swear by homeopathy. There are people who swear by acupuncture. My heart goes to them. If it works for you, great. Are you asking me, is there any scientific proof that taking vitamin C or selenium or herbs or acupuncture or homeopathy? The question is, there is no scientific proof that it helps the immune system. And I know it's a buzzword. Take vitamin C, it will improve your immune system. And I just have to say something about vitamin C. I grew up in a system where they said, you take your vitamin C, it would decrease the time for you to recover from influenza, and it would prevent influenza from affecting you. There was a huge meta-analysis by the Cochrane Library, I think about 12 years ago, where they've analyzed all published studies that were done and came out to the conclusion that there are only 3 subsets of individuals who enjoy vitamin C. One group are athletes who do ultra marathons, those who run 160 kilometers. The second group is soldiers who train in subarctic weather. And the third and largest group is the people who manufacture it and sell vitamin C.
Wait a minute. You're not going to tell me that chicken soup doesn't help with the cold, are you?
I am. It helps you feel better. And in fact, when you have a cold, when you have an upper respiratory infection, you want to lower the temperature because the inflammatory process increases your temperature.
So
you want to have an ice cream. You want to have an ice cream.
Right. Now back to the vaccine. Another couple of comments from you. Our time is running short. We have 10 more minutes with Professor Friedman. And this has been fascinating to me, and I'm sure to many of us. So if you do have any questions, get them in now.
I see I see 99 plus questions. Yeah, David.
Yeah, well, we're
You're a
trying
good
to,
student,
bring
David.
them down into one or two here. Yeah, we don't have time for that. So
I can,
how long,
David,
Yeah, yeah.
I can propose, I'll give you my email. If anybody has specific questions, you can give them my email. And the time of my leisure, I can answer questions, you know, not a problem for me, seriously.
Thank you so much. That's very generous of you. We appreciate that. Just a couple of other things that have come up, questions. The vaccine that we have now, will this need to be taken annually? And how long will it last?
Two unanswered questions. But if you look at the biology of this specific strain of viruses, the coronaviruses, by the way, have 7 different strains that affect human beings, more than 200 affecting mammals and birds. Only 7 affecting the human beings. 4 only cause upper respiratory, and 3 can be dangerous to your health and to your life. This particular family of viruses is far less mutable than an influenza virus, which is also an RNA virus, respiratory syncytial virus, and definitely HIV. It's 25% as mutable as HIV and 50% as influenza. I don't know. Nobody really knows. There have been a lot of mutations. There have been a lot of discussion and media hype about the British variant, the South African variant. Now I heard about the Brazilian variant. You know, it's a lot of brouhaha. We think, based on serology conversion, that for at least 8 months, there is going to be sufficient protection. Whether that lasts a year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. You know, we get vaccinated for influenza once a year. If it's only 50%, maybe every 2 years, maybe every 4 years, maybe once in a life. I don't know. Nobody really knows. We will have to wait and see.
David, did you have a question?
Here's a question. How does immunity from a vaccine compare to immunity acquired from going through the actual COVID disease?
It's a very good question. We can assess. The way to assess immunity goes through either the easy way of measuring the levels of antibodies, a more rigorous way of testing how many of these antibodies can neutralize in the lab, in vitro, can neutralize the COVID-19 or the virus itself, and then a more complicated assay that shows what is the capability of the T cells to inactivate the virus. The latter is seldom being done. So we know, based on a single analysis, that the levels of antibodies and neutralizing antibodies that are offered by the vaccination are at a higher level than those that are offered by being infected naturally. And the reason for that is you know how much you inject into the body in terms of messenger RNA or in terms of the virus. People who are infected can have very little amount of virus or a lot of virus. And depending on the amount of initial virus, the immune system may be up in the air or down here. And there's always a decline. So we cannot tell you. This is why, even though currently those who are infected are not prioritized in Israel to be vaccinated, there is a preliminary evidence that those who were infected and were immunized and were vaccinated, the levels of antibodies are far above those who were not previously infected. So that may offer an advantage. There is no cross-reactivity, and it does not pose any harm to the person being infected.
Does COVID affect the unborn, doctor?
No. The short answer is no, and there have been not a lot of data, but there have been some reviews back in April, then in October, then in August, then again in October, looking, is COVID-19 affecting the fetus? Is the COVID-19 affecting the mother? And there is some statistical evidence that in women who were pregnant during the time and were infected, especially in the first trimester, their offspring, the baby tends to be small for dates. It tends to be smaller than expected, maybe a hint of early delivery, but there is nothing in terms of malformations, in terms of abnormalities, and it does not affect the mother. Women who are pregnant are not at a higher risk for developing COVID-19 or clinically meaningful COVID-19.
So let me ask you, if I may, one final question. I have been your student now for a few days and been reading what you've been writing and listening to you. And let's see if I've got what you're trying to say. From what I understand, if here in Israel, we would let the children go back to school, and then they would all develop, and they would get infected with the virus over time, and they would become inoculated. They would have antibodies and would be protected. And if I understand correctly, would they then, they would not pass the disease on to others?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Very, very seldom do they.
Very seldomly. Okay. So we should let the kids back to school, and people even up till 20 years old, I think you said, handle it quite well. They should go back and to life. And then on the other side, we need to protect our 65-year-olds and above, and those who have underlying diseases. Protect them by isolation, just keeping them away from the virus until they can get an inoculation and a vaccination. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if we did that, and with the rate of vaccinations that we have going on right now, you're saying that by the end of February, if I'm not mistaken, we could start to go back to some sort of normal life here in Israel.
A new normal. A new normal.
A new normal, okay. And perhaps even by Passover,
Get rid of the masks. Get rid of the masks.
Is that a fair assessment? Have I been a good student?
Since the second temple has been torn down, the predictions have been given to fools. I'm not a fool. I've predicted that this would be over in May. I did not say which year. I think, realistically speaking, and looking at the rate right now, and especially the vaccine, which is a game changer, I think we can be, on November 10th, 1942, after Montgomery defeated Rommel in El Alamein, Churchill said the very famous sentence, "This is not the end. This is not even the beginning of the end, but it may be the end of the beginning." So we are at the end of the beginning.
Very well put. Very, very well put. Well, this has been fascinating and encouraging. It's so good to hear.
Thank you very much.
Just the basic facts of what's going on with so much misinformation. Professor, we thank you.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.
With your business.
I will.
We would like you to pay a visit to the Knesset and tell the politicians what we need to do here in the country to get our lives back.
I've been in contact with Ifat Shasha Biton when she was the head of the Corona Committee, and she shares my views. I'm the head of the National Ethics Committee in the Ministry of Health, and once a year I go to the Knesset, but they don't listen. They listen primarily to themselves. These are politicians. I guess it's like that worldwide. They don't listen to others. They think they swallowed all the intelligence and all the knowledge. They didn't. Shh, don't tell them that.
Well, no, somebody needs to tell them. We are going to tell them, Doctor. And
thank you very much.
Yeah, and you and your colleagues to choose. No, thank you. Thank you. Let's just give a thanks to.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
To our dear friend. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Litraot. Well, if you would stay with us another minute or two of your time, I'd just like to welcome all of you who have come to join us here. We hope it was informative for you. We made this free for all of our readers and people who come to visit us at Israel Today, because we know this is such an important thing. We're all, the whole world over is dealing with this, and we really wanted people to get educated and to get a firsthand understanding of what's going on. I found it so refreshing to listen to an Israeli professor who just speaks so clearly. There's no, combino, as we say, or compromising. The issues are very clear, and we should all take encouragement from all of that, and also be praying for our governments and for our nations and our people, that we will know, how to go forward with this whole thing. So let's not be foolish. He still told us we should need to, take care of ourselves and do what's right. I would like to also, just a minute of your attention, I'd like to just show you, this is what we offered here on our site to come and be a part of this this talk. We have many other also interesting topics that we talk about, and we'd like to invite you, if you go to our webpage, you can see them here. We have events for our members to come and listen to experts, or we have, for example, tours. These tours are very popular. They've been very well received. There is another one coming up on February 9th. If you go to our website and you just go in, just in the top left-hand corner, right up here, members events, and you can get in there and you can sign up for this event here. We do have a book club that we just started. We have a few members. Of course, these are in English, by the way. I think you would understand that. But we have had many German speakers join us for these tours, especially. They've been very popular with German speakers as well. You can also go back and look at events that we had in the past for our members. Here was a tour of Tzipori. That was fascinating, about where it was very close to where Jesus grew up and where his family would have went shopping, and it was a town very close to Nazareth. We had an interview with a man who was a Muslim terrorist. He was part of the military forces of the PLO, and now he is an ardent supporter of Israel. He calls himself a Zionist and a lover of Israel. You can watch that interview also here for our members, and many other things. We have discussions and talks. So that's just a little bit. We wanted to introduce some of you who may not be familiar with what it means to be a member on Israel Today. It gives you also special articles and special tours and special events. Here's an interview right here with Professor Friedman and another professor, Davidovich. I think I got them mixed up when I introduced Professor Friedman. I was reading his biography. So anyway, we thank you for joining us, and we invite you to come and join our family here at Israel Today. Become a member, as our editor-in-chief Aviel likes to say, for the price of a cup of coffee. You can be a member of Israel Today and enjoy all of our benefits and be a part of the family here. Dov, would you like to say something to our German visitors?
Ja, ich will mich herzlich bei Ihnen bedanken, dass ihr, ich sage einfach du, dass ihr bei uns dabei wart, und ich hoffe, ihr habt ein bisschen von meiner schnell getippten Übersetzung mitkriegen können. Dieses ganze Treffen wird natürlich auch auf unserer Webseite erscheinen, und ja, ich hoffe dann da auch ein paar Dinge zu übersetzen. Ich hoffe, ihr habt einiges mitgekriegt, und wir werden uns sicherlich bald wieder bei einem unserer Israel heute Stammtische auch bei der deutschen Seite wieder treffen. Wir freuen uns, dass wir diesmal mal alle zusammen sein konnten, Englisch und Deutsch. Wir sind nämlich eine einzige große Gemeinde. Wir alle haben die gleiche Liebe zu diesem Land, und ich freue mich wirklich, dass wir uns bald wiedersehen. Okay, back to you, David.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Auf Wiedersehen. Shalom. Bye-bye.
Litraut, Litraut, Shalom.
Be safe.
Shalom,
Be
Shalom.
safe. And we are here. We will be letting you know what's going on in Israel. I loved what the professor said, that somehow Israel can be like an example of how other nations can deal with this. So we hope and pray that this will happen even within the next coming months, that we will see a real change here. And we hope and pray for your nations as well, that you will find a way to get beyond this. And then, of course, you can all come and visit us here in Israel. We love to see you. You're all invited for a cup of coffee at our offices. This is where Dov is
Yes.
sitting right
We're
now
waiting for this.
in Jerusalem. We are waiting to see you.
Almost.
Almost. Pretty soon, pretty soon. Thank you all. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.
Noch eine letzte Erklärung, nochmal eine Frage. Dieses ganze Gespräch wird später auf unserer Webseite erscheinen. Machen Sie es gut. Shalom, Shalom aus Israel. Litraut und bleiben Sie alle gesund. Bis zum nächsten Mal.